Okay. First off, pretty good job with the grades. Average grade was 85, which is 5 points higher than any class I've had in like the last 5 years. Okay. So either y'all are really good students, or I'm a pretty okay teacher, but I think it's probably somewhere in between. So well done. Uh, to just keep going further with it. I mean, use the videos, keep studying, and all I can say is carry on and good job. Okay. All right. So we are starting to get up to the first position paper. And remember the things that I've requested for you to do. The position paper will be 600 words, no more. Okay. Why am I stopping at 600 words? It is amazing how the mind focuses when you have fewer words to use instead of more. All right. When I was going to get my master's, we had to do position papers of 300 words or less. And that's one page, double spaced, 12-point font. And it is amazing how efficient the mind becomes when you have fewer words to work with. Along with everything else I'm trying to teach you is this particular thing is a very valuable piece for you, especially when you need to be able to speak and be able to bring your point across. And this is the reason why I have the position papers. Business writing is a very unique skill. I thought I was a good writer, and then I went into my master's degree and I realized how poor I was. And I think also that it is important for me as a teacher to stress upon you to work your writing skills. Your ability to communicate many times can be the difference between your own success and failure. And that's why I want to do this. So let's talk about what the first position paper is going to be about. It is going to be about the subject that we're going to have for chapter 4, which is the concept of make or buy, vertical integration. So I'm going to start off talking about vertical integration. I will talk about this in a note structure, and we'll carry on a few other things, but I want you to think of the position paper in this way. So make or buy. Make or buy. Let's find my little piece of nerd chunk. What does make or buy mean? Make or buy means basically that I will be creating every single piece of equipment myself, from raw materials to subassembly to finished goods, and I will control all of the channels of distribution on my own. That is the make decision. Buy. Buy says, I will not make everything myself. I will contract with other individuals to make those particular parts. They will make them in an economies of scale way that will save me revenues. I do that because these parts aren't particularly unique or special, and they have the advantages of commodities in that they can be produced efficiently and at a lower cost than I can. That's the buy decision. All right. So vertical integration, which is a major part of this chapter, is when one organization does all the work. To integrate is to combine disparate elements into a single entity. That is the dictionary definition of what integrate means. To combine disparate elements into a single entity. Vertical integration is to combine the three members of the channel: manufacturers, intermediaries, wholesalers, retailers, and specialized, into a single unit that ultimately delivers to the end user. That is vertical integration. How do we make choices on that? Well, it has to be done channel function by channel function. I have to look at all of the channel functions and say to myself, I can do that more efficiently at a less cost than if it were done by someone else. I can process my own fees. I can do my own financing. I can do all physical possession and ownership. I can do all of those things at the same time. And I can do them better and more efficient. Think about this. That's a very big decision because, once again, place is the most expensive and the most difficult to change. It's not a decision that you make lightly. You have to think hard about it. And so let me let the cat out of the bag and say that the number one decision, or the place that you start from, and yes, this is a test question, you always start from the buy position. By its very nature, the buy choice will usually be the least expensive. And remember what cost gaps are and the necessity of channels are, that you're always working towards a zero-based decision where you're being able to deliver those goods at the minimum cost. And so what are the reasons why you would do integration? Well, if you're the upstream partner, that's called a forward or downstream integration. And this is where the manufacturer integrates the distribution function. The manufacturer decides, I'm going to take all of this over because I myself have unique capabilities and idiosyncratic investments in my system that make it unique enough that I provide value in everything I make. If I'm a backward or an upstream, going upstream, and I am the retailer, I come out with my own branded source or product. So unique, they have my name on it. Starbucks. Starbucks backward or upstream integrates. They do all their own production. Now they do hire out, don't get me wrong, but they do the contracting and the basic functions that way. They also invest in fields. So they do that in a way. And so what do we call that buy decision? Is outsourcing. Outsourcing is when an organization decides to buy the services from a third party. And the truth is, in the world as it is right now, that's to be expected. Bless you. So, as I've said before, buy is the end point of one side of the continuum. Buy is the end point on one side of the continuum. where every single function is outsourced. This is kind of a somewhat silly statement, but we want to use this as the extreme side of it so that you kind of get an idea. This is the pure transactional environment in which all that you're really doing is paying for services and garnering no long-term relationships. And of course, in the extremes, very rare. No, this doesn't true, but I want you to understand that in the buy, when the total end of one side of the continuum, everything is outsourced. There's no sharing, no distinctions, no continuity. It's choose whoever has the items that I need, I buy. The truth is that most organizations go through what's called a relational governance or quasi-vertical integration. There's a compromise that goes on. And that most systems have some of the properties of being owned and independent by. In other words, relational governance puts together a close and committed relationship so that even though it is not vertically integrated, the commitment between the partners acts as if there is a vertical integration. The advantages of being in a vertical relationship show themselves when there is a relational governance or a quasi-vertical integration. The channels have some properties of being both owned and bought. And so, remember this, the 2-point bonus question, every channel function has a cost, okay? So, when we're talking about the make or buy channels, there are costs and there are benefits. Here's the problem with vertical integration. If I'm a manufacturer, all right, think in the mindset of a manufacturer. I'm trying to sell as many products as I possibly can. Is distribution my specialty? Or is my specialty the goods that I make? That's the question you have to think about. I may be outstanding in building guitars, but I may know nothing about the proper way to ship them. That's the inherent difficulty of assuming that you know all of the distribution costs. You're outside of your stream. And basically, very often, costs and risks are underestimated. This is one of the reasons why the buy is the set piece that you start with. But the benefits is that you control the firm's output. It can be exploited. If control of the operation is centered to your ability to succeed, then absolutely yes. I use Starbucks a lot because Starbucks is so unique when you consider it. It's kind of one of these quasi-integrations, somehow mostly by, somehow, I mean, but truly, a make environment. And a part of that has to be because the experience in the Starbucks is holistic. It is all, it's so I do research on wine, okay? And wine and coffee are very much the same things, okay? All 5 senses take into account when you drink a cup of coffee. You smell the coffee, you see it, you taste it, you feel it. It's all 5, so you can even hear it as it's poured. And it's the sensory information, this, total encapsulation that drives the vertical integration. The confidence of knowing that you're in a complete environment is what makes it special. IBM, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but IBM I don't know if you knew it, but IBM for 30 years was the largest software manufacturer in the world. All right. I mean, you don't look at them because they tend to be hardware. But the AS400 systems that they have started from the 80s, even until now, do all of the banking in the world. I don't know if you know that either. However, in 2001, they decided to get totally out of the PC industry, which everybody thought that was a crazy decision. In 2007, they sold their laptop division, in which they, in essence, developed the ThinkPad around. They sold it to Lenovo. Lenovo was a brand manufacturer who became famous for building the ThinkPads. In 2010, they started doing away with all of their selling of computer systems and went totally to a vertical integrated system. This meant that a lot of the value-added resellers that were selling IBMs were kind of left out in the cold. But what it did for IBM was it gave this total environment in which they would live in, their customers could live in. And so ultimately, there was a great deal of satisfaction from IBM and their customers. Anyway, I'm going on, sorry. So I want you to think about electric vehicles. So electric vehicles have been around for almost 20 years now. They're certainly in what I would consider to be the mainstream. And so what this question is to think about them and how one of the things are about electric vehicles, there are very few moving parts. It's kind of interesting when you study, I've done this with my graduate students, and when you study Tesla, one of the things that people underestimate, or let's just say overlook, is the fact that the people who drive Tesla are the software engineers that work within Tesla itself, not necessarily the physical people, but the Tesla software specialists are the best in the world. All right. Single largest part in a car is the batteries. It's kind of interesting because I've read that in the future they're talking about doing the skateboard model, where literally you would buy the chassis and then after 5 years you'd slide out the battery set, put in a new battery, and there you go. Also realize that the only moving parts generally are the wheels themselves, and those are the motors. One of the difficulties I want you to think about also is that over 50% of most retail dealers make most of their money on service. So I want you to think about those particular pieces. And now let's go into the position paper. This is the position paper. Electric vehicles, not hybrids, but vehicles with no internal combustion engine, have the greatest chance for success being sold in the vertical market. That is the premise. And this is the position statement. So, how do you break this down when you're going to argue it? Okay. If any of you ever get in debates, okay, or you understand how to go and effectively argue, all right? One of the things that you have to look at this is that this is a combined or conjunctive statement. It's based upon 3 pieces in here. So the first piece is electric vehicles, okay? Next is it has the greatest chance. And then the third part is in the vertical market. When you argue yes or no within your groups, if you're arguing true, you're saying this plus this plus this is true. If you believe that it is false, what you would do is argue which one of these are not true, okay? And so that's how you'll go about doing the position paper, all right? In your groups, you must say electric vehicles have the greatest chance in the vertical market. So you need to define what the vertical market is, what its advantages are, and how those relate to electric vehicles. And that's how you win the argument. If you say the vertical market does not have the ability to give it the greatest chance, then you argue against it. If you believe traditional dealerships give you the best chances based upon what they have, then that's what you argue, okay? Okay, so here are the parameters. It'll be created by your group, supporting or not supporting the premise. I want in the first two sentences for you to tell me whether you agree or disagree within the first two sentences. The rest is justification. Okay? No prevarication. I want you to strongly state yes or no, because that's the way you're going to have to argue stuff when the real world's out, when you go out there. Okay? 600 words, no more. I want it to be 12 point times Roman, 1 inch margins, double space. List all of your group members and your group ID. 3 sources get you a name. Yes.
Will you post the groups again?
Yeah, I will. I'll send them to you tonight. Yeah, I realized that we were, you know, how quick that was, and I do need to post that. I will. Yeah. So anyway, this is, I think next Thursday. I'll have to look it up. But it'll be due next Thursday. I'll send out all your group member stuff. And so this is the position statement. All right. Do your group support this? What are the reasons why? Okay. Remember, I wanted an APA style. Remember how I showed you how to do it in Microsoft Word? Like I said, give me 3 sources. All right. Look up electric vehicles, look up the concept of vertical integration. Okay. Whatever you need to show to me success, and stay on point. Okay. With your argument. In other words, talk to me about what vertical integration is. Okay. Talk to me about what electric vehicles are. Don't stray too far away of the abilities that electric vehicles have. Just relate them to this argument. Okay. Yes.
You can take any points off. We go like a couple words every 600.
No, but you know what? I got dinged a letter grade for that. But I won't, you know, but I'm just saying, keep it down. Okay. You know, it helps. Maybe a point or two if it's too long or too short.
Are you looking at exactly 600 words?
No. I mean, look, brevity is the soul of a wit, Shakespeare once said. Okay, so if you give me a really tight argument, yeah, 400 words is fine. But if you're rambling all over looking for direction, no. You know, make it sharp, succinct, to the point.
You're really where we decide.
Yeah. I mean, but you know, I want to have confidence that you know what you're talking about. Okay. Okay, so I think that's it. Yep. So let me go on and discuss a little bit more. And get on with talking about this. So I've already gone over the basics that I talked about in the first slides. So I won't really kind of trod that ground again. Just remember that it's difficult to reverse. It's not easy to deploy. It can be appealing, but the difficulty, of course, is that you're out of your league. You're not on home turf. You're doing things that you may not necessarily have the most experience at. And sometimes you might be left to the wolves. So you've got to be careful about it. And then just to show you, this is what the traditional structure is. And so in a traditional horizontal structure, you have the manufacturer. Those are separate wholesaler, retailers, specialized intermediaries. That's the intermediary group. Realize that when you're looking at a horizontal structure, you're talking about unique organizations that have their own purpose and reason for being in existence. They have their own income statements and balance sheets. They're separate, they're independent, but interdependent. Vertical structure is one single corporation. Manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer, consumer, all owned by one organization and one organization alone. Although they don't own the consumer, all right, despite what they might think. So just recognize that it's up and down like that, and somebody should have made a better slide. The truth is that, as I said before, is that there's really more of a middle ground that most of the world lives in. And so in the classic marketing contracting where you buy stuff, okay, for a third party will do it for a price. They put their people up, their money, their risk, their responsibility. Those are all of the costs that are associated with it. You just pay a lump sum for them to do and perform all of those functions. The operation or the gain and the loss comes down on their side. In a vertical integration, you do it. Your people, your money, your risk, your responsibility, you reap the rewards, and that is the gain and the loss. But then once again, your loss, yes, okay? Where in a relational governance, the truth is that there is a mutual agreement to be able to share responsibility together. Just realize that these choices are not binary. Not everything is make or buy. And that the sharing of expertise and the sharing of responsibility is generally what I would say the product of mature relationships, all right? Just remember that relational governance always implies a compromise, and that is the true essence of where the real world is. So we've seen this slide already, so I'll go past it and just realize this is kind of what, if we were to look at who does what channel functions in the classic market versus vertical integration. So in a classic marketing, when we talk about push strategy, the manufacturer representatives represent the manufacturers. Yeah, that's what it is. And the independent wholesalers have their own representatives, and the retailers have their own groups as well. Manufacturers' representatives actually can also be independent agents who basically do not take the property of the goods that they sell. The thing that they're good at is just sell it. But in the classic one, they control everything. In a vertical integration, the producer has their own sales force that always pushes downward. The distributor, or excuse me, the wholesale distributing is just an arm of the producer, and the company store is the same thing. You own the channels all the way through. In a quasi-vertical or quasi-vertical integration, you have a kind of mix, okay? You can have sales agencies, such as independent representatives, who go out and market these particular goods. Interestingly enough, in distribution, joint ventures, many times often you'll see manufacturers who will come together to actually create their own manufacturing system. In the late 80s, Toyota and Chevrolet, or excuse me, General Motors, got together and built a factory in Northern California to make the Chevy Nova, which was also for Bolt, the same as the Toyota Corolla. It was a great benefit for GM to be able to have Toyota basically working on their supply chain. The interesting thing is that even though they were both for both the same, the Corolla outsold the Nova 5-1. Wonder what? Okay. So anyway, then finally the retail distribution is a franchise store, and we'll talk about franchises later. So what are the benefits of a make or buy channel? Who are they and where do they go to? Well, as I said before, the benefits are that you control and the managers can exploit it to improve their desire to take advantage of opportunities that they can't when they're trying to round up people together to get things done. The bad side of that, as I've said before, is that it's easy to underestimate the cost because you're not in your home turf. You don't know what you're doing. So, as I talked about, IBM, of course, they're capital equipment manufacturers. They sell just about everything, but especially when it comes to the PCs, they just found that manufacturing as a business opportunity was becoming delimited. Because one of the great things about computers, by the way, is that computers have an extremely long shelf life if you're willing to keep up the updates. And it was difficult for IBM to turn out a certain number of AS400s every year and hope that the business industry would continue to buy it. What also happens with these times as well is that you have difficulty with being able to forecast demand, all right? So buying occurs at the end of the year, stretch for the first 5 months is difficult, see sales come up in summer, and you get this over and over again. However, when IBM became a vertical integrator, they were able to tap into a steady stream of maintenance contracts for the products that they manufacture. In the long run, it helped them. So there's a company called Jack Henry. I worked for a bank at one time, and Jack Henry sells nothing but IBM equipment, but they also sell software. And because they're able to do this, small banks less than $1 billion are able to survive quite well because they're able to tap in a steady stream of contracts. Doesn't always work that way, okay? It's not as easy as it looks. Because once again, realize that you're going on soil that you're not necessarily that good at. So Allianz was a German insurance company and acquired a bank, but Allianz has no idea what investment banking is about. It didn't fit the company. It was a bad merger, and they have ultimately had to separate it, go apart. One of the interesting mergers of all time was Chrysler-Dahmer in 1993. And Daimler and Chrysler merged together thinking that Chrysler was going to be the #1 company, and Daimler came in and said, no, not. And for 3 years, they kind of fought against each other, trying to create a vertical integration. They had a mutual divorce. It was actually great for Chrysler because it built some excellent machines for about a decade, and then they fell in disrepute. So it doesn't always work, okay? So I think I'm gonna stop right there. I think I'm running past my margins, so I'm gonna let y'all out early today. If anybody would like to see their grades, I mean, they're posted online now, but if you'd like me to look at the paper, I have them. But until then, everybody have a good day.
I missed my point.